Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. So, when I was a kid, one of my favorite things that I would like to do was watch Pro Tour coverage. I would go back and I'd watch like the greats doing the greatness. And one of my favorite ones to watch was Pro Tour Gatecrash. So, this actually happened when I was playing Magic, but I would love to rewatch it back in high school. I would watch it all the time when I got older. And so we're kind of just going to do some running commentary while we watch the match. It's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a little bit weird. We're playing it by ear. Big shout out to Magic the Gathering, of course, for creating what we love. How am I not subscribed to Magic? If you're not subscribed to Magic, go subscribe to Magic the Gathering. And if you're not subscribed to me and you enjoy Goblin's content, please hit that like button, hit that follow. It's the easiest way to show me that you enjoy what I do. And I'm here to support you. So thank you for what you do. Now, we're going to be watching this. I will say this is a travesty. Only 515 people have liked this match, and it's been watched 166,000 times. So please, support Magic the Gathering. Go like this match. But with that all being said, we're going to go back to the beginning. Eric Froelich versus Tom Martell. Looks like Naya Monsters versus Mardu Aristocrats versus Naya Monsters. So Falconwrath Aristocrat, just basically this black-white deck is all about sacrifice synergies. It's all about being able to get value from death triggers. And this Naya Monsters deck just plays Boros Reckoner, locks it on Smiter. Flinthoof Boar is a 2-mana 2-1, or no, 2-mana 3-2. And if you have a mountain, it gets haste. And then they also play Mizium Mortars, which is 2-mana, deal 4 damage, but you can overload it to deal 4 damage to target creature you don't control, 4 damage to overload it, 4 damage to each creature your opponents don't control. I think it's Silver something Paladin is a soul bond creature that, as long as it's soul bonded, the creature has double strike. However, Eric Froelich was able to slow his opponent down by going Burning Tree into Flinthoof Boar, making 2 good blockers that he could trade with his opponent's creatures if they choose to attack. And also notable, Soul Bond does nothing if the creature is dead. So once your other Soul Bond creature dies, your original creature that has Soul Bond doesn't affect anything anymore. He has another Silver Slate Paladin in his hand, a Restoration Angel, and 2 Falconwrath Aristocrats. This was the tournament where Falconwrath Aristocrat kind of broke out. It was a really niche card that wasn't really seeing play. This Naiad Monsters deck was like the de facto best deck in the format. And this Aristocrats deck was just able to go super wide, be super efficient in what they do, and have you attack, you sack the creatures to give your Falconwrath indestructible. If it's a human, it gets a counter. It just gets a little bit bigger in the air. And a big weakness for this Naya Monsters deck was they just didn't play flyers. It was something where they tried looking at different builds of the list, and honestly, just being able to be aggressive was the best play. This 4-mana 4/1 flying in haste that can get bigger if they sack a creature, and you can give it indestructible so that it fogs removal, is very good. Conscripts is insane here because it's a 5-mana Act of Treason on a 3/3 haste. So if he goes Zealous Conscripts here, steal your untapped Boros Reckoner, attack, you get to go 1, 2, 3. So it's 2 double strike creatures, the soul bond creatures. So that's 4, 8 plus the 2 plus the 1. That's 11 plus the 3 from the Zealous Conscripts. That's 14 plus the Boros Reckoner is 17. So his opponent would have to chump, but it looks like doesn't have any mana for the Zealous Conscripts or the 2 other 4-drops in the hand. Has to just pass it back and pray there's a land on top to try to get to next turn. Eric is in a really controlling position here. Being able to have double Boros Reckoner against the aggressive deck is an amazing spot to be in. However, Eric is also struggling on land drops, only able to deploy 1 spell per turn. If Eric had 1 more land, he could double spell every turn, but he's been stuck on 4, so he has to try to figure out, should I play a 3-drop or should I play removal? What am I going to do? Am I going to try to hit this over? And so what he decides is to attack. Boros Reckoner can pay a red to give itself first strike. So if his opponent goes to block, he can just eat the thing in blocks, or eat the thing in first strike. If it's blocked by a double striking creature, the first strike damage will deal damage to the Boros Reckoner, and then the Boros Reckoner can dome Tom Martell, or it can kill another one of his creatures. He believes this attack is good, but Tom's going to arrive at the decision to not block, I believe. Okay, throws a 1/1 in front, and before damage sacrifices it to the Falconwrath Aristocrat. Death Trigger makes a 1/1 Spirit, takes 3, go to 10. This is essentially the same as not blocking. He had a free block with the Haunted Witness, so he just basically put it before it, sacked it before damage to fog. Now, Amizium Mortars is going to be aimed at the Silver Paladin, and and then in response, the Falcon Wraith Aristocrat will fog it by sacrificing it. Now, Tom's really in a lot of pain because he drew another Cartel Aristocrat. So Cartel Aristocrat is the sack outlet that he has on the board, but he's looking at the double Boros record and he's got to pick it up. All right, so they go to a game 2. Thankfully, this is Pro Tour Magic, so they're going to be playing. Pro Tour Magic usually is best of 5, but I guess that's only the finals. Maybe they didn't start that policy yet. So it looks like they are sideboarding, so it's probably going to be a best of 3 then. We're going to go over to. All right, so we're back. We caught it right after they finished game 1. We caught it. We were talking about the way that the game was played. We're going to go back. Gatecrash semifinals. Full screen. Yeah, this Jace did really heavy lifting during that match. Let's skip forward just a little bit. Looks like they're resolving their mulligans. No. Let me see if this still works. Fingers crossed. Please? All right, maybe. It's still a black screen. Let me see if I can stop streaming. Does that fix it? If I stop sharing my screen, it's back. Okay. Share screen. Gatecrash. Share. Fingers crossed. We're trying something new. Let's see if this works. Black screen. Okay. Maybe if I zoom out and then I zoom back in, it has to be the live streaming. So if we share the whole screen, does that work better? Yes. No. It finally loaded. Late. All right, so now we're sharing the whole screen. Going back to the game. Don't black out on me, please. Okay. Perfect. So we're in game 2. Larson was able to win with a negating his opponent's negate on his Boros Charm. Really slow start from both players, playing just efficient mana early, an Augur of Bolas, some filter, card filtration from both players, 2 mana cantrips, quote unquote. Just trying to make sure that they don't set themselves up in a position where they're going to be behind or restricted on their mana. Think Twice was an amazing card back in this standard format. It allowed the control decks to draw 2 cards with 1 card over turns, which was nice. Instead of having to pay 3 mana at sorcery speed, you can just leave up mana and then do stuff. It looks like Larson wanted to make sure that he had an opportunity to use his mana efficiently before Stark untapped. Then, end step. Oh, Larson's going to jam the Thundermaw Hellkite here. Thundermaw Hellkite being a 5 mana 5/5 flyer with haste, and when it enters, it pings your opponent's flyers and taps them down. Looks like instead of letting it go to the top with the is it Azorius charm? Instead, he's going to unsummon it to put it back in his hand so he can recast it and still have a card that he draws next turn. Runs out the Thundermaw Hellkite. It's going to murder. It looks like murder. Opponent trying his best to kill the Thundermaw. The Dissipate being able to kill. I'm trying to figure out what that other card he cast was. Looks like Boros Charm. Sphinxes for, was that 3? Sphinxes for 3. Gain some life, draw some cards. Now, Restoration Angel is going to blink his Augur. Bolas, look at the top 3. Grab an Azorius Charm. Passes it back. Untap of keep draw. Tries to figure out what land to play. Looking at the Nephalia Drown Yards. It's going to play a check land. Opponent plays an Azorius Charm to draw. Untap, upkeep, draw. Looks at the Snapcaster Mage in his hand. We're going to be casting a Restoration Angel at the end step. Restoration Angel flips the Augur Bolas. Augur Bolas reveals a Dissipate, passes it back. Opponent is going to Searing Blaze. Searing Spear. That was a really important card in that standard because it dealt 4, and almost everything that was important had 4 toughness. Dissipate's really good. If it's countered, it exiles it instead of putting it in the graveyard, which sometimes really matters. Looks like Augur Bolas flipped a land, a Restoration Angel, and a negate. Grabs the negate. Has Restoration Angel, Nephalia Drownyard, Sphinx's Revelation, negate in his hand. Ben Stark does. Opponent looking to try to push damage. Ben Stark really ahead here, 24-18. Even though he's playing the defense, he's milling his opponent out. He's got all the cards in hand. He's got the resources. He's got enough mana to make sure that he can leave up Nephalia Drownyard every turn and have Sphinx's Revelation mana up, which is so good here. Supreme Verdict. Boros Charm, give things indestructible. Plays a tap land and passes. Larson's looking to try to figure out how he can close this game as fast as possible. Ben slowly is inevitably getting to a place where the game and Supreme Verdict destroys all creatures. His was indestructible. Ben just forgot to put his creatures in the graveyard. He was thinking it was a counter spell, but you know, even the greats sometimes misread the cards or make mistakes. So they're just resolving that real quick. He's thinking about, okay, was the Thundermaw exiled with my Dissipate? No, it wasn't, because it was killed. Going back to end step. After attacks, takes 4, go to 17. Is going to mill with the Nephalia, untap, upkeep, draw, draws it Duress. Devour Flesh, negate, Sphinx's Revelation, Dissipate. Nephalia, Drownyard, Duress are the cards in hand for Ben Stark. Now, Duress is his opponent, takes one of the good cards out of their hand. The glare keeps us from seeing it. Now, Larson is trying to figure out slams Thundermaw, Hellkite. Sphinx's Revelation for, is that 6? So 17 right now. Trying to dig for an Essence Scatter. It's like, you only have 1 negate, correct? Yes. In the graveyard. And it's in exile? Correct. Yes. So he's like, I would like to do this with my negate backup. I would like to gain enough life to try to fog your combat. And now when you go to attacks, I can try to kill your things. Really well played by Ben Stark here. Plays a land for turn. Plays a Supreme Verdict. And now this is, as a control player, this is where you want to be. You have triple Nephalia. You have 4 Nephalia Drownyards in play. That means you're milling your opponent for 12 each turn. And you're at 14 life, so that really makes it hard for your opponent to kill you in anything faster than 2 turn cycles. And it looks like Larson just played a land and passed. Ben Stark is going to pass. He's going to count his opponent's library, say, okay, so you do lose in your upkeep. If I mill you, and then I mill you, and then I mill you, and then I mill you, do you lose as you draw? Because again, this is end step for Joel Larson. Ben Stark gets to untap. Still in the end step. Larson is trying to figure out. Ben Stark is a good man. He's showing his opponent negate and dissipate, saying, I have enough mana to make sure that you won't be able to get a threat into play, and these Nephalia Drownyards are enough to kill you. And so Ben Stark taking it down versus Jeskai control with Esper control. The Nephalia Drownyards really drowning his opponent in value there. Having a quick laugh, because when you're playing with one of the greats, losses are to be expected. And a great smile from Ben Stark, cracking it as a legend does. When you're playing high-level Magic, you got to be able to have fun, because it's at the end of the day. And if you take yourself too seriously, everyone's going to take you too seriously. Look at Brian Kibler. Look at Ben Stark. Look at some of the legends. It's really important to see how they carry themselves, how they talk, how they act, because honestly, it's a game, and we're supposed to enjoy it with each other. The Gathering. These 2 players, even though they're playing at the Pro Tour and they're trying to win, they both love the game. They both play the game extremely well. They have a lot of respect for each other. And it's really nice to see them just having a conversation while playing on the biggest stage in the world. And this was one of my favorite things to do as a kid. You just watch people who are like a billion times better than you at Magic play the game at the highest level. And what I would do is if I didn't know what cards were, I would just like pull up the Gatherer like in a separate tab, and I'd pause it whenever I'd see a card I didn't know what it did, and I'd just look it up. And being able to like do that live research, being able to like put the connections together, be like, oh, that's why that card is there. That's how that card works. It means so much and helps your brain develop. Also, this is really important to see. This was back before they always went to 7. Tom Martell had to go to actual 6 cards and just hope it was a good hand. Thankfully, it looks like it is. Oh, Evolution Sage. Or Gyre's, is it Gyre Sage? Gyre Sage is a really cool card. It's a 2-mana 2/1, I believe, that when evolve, whenever another creature with greater power enters, it gets a +1/+1 counter, and you can tap it for a green. I think if you have some amount of counters. So opponent plays a Boros Reckoner, the Gyre Sage gets a counter, so now it has the option to either be an attacker or to tap it for mana. Eric deigns to be aggressive because his opponent's already taken 2 from the Godless Shrine. So being able to turn the creature sideways here actually makes Tom Martell more defensive, because Tom is now looking at his hand and seeing, okay, can I race this Boros Reckoner? And he can't. He can't attack with his Champion of the Parish, just a measly 1/1, into the Boros Reckoner. Pacifism, actual factual pacifism in the sideboard for Eric Froelich in this Naya Monsters deck. And I guess that makes sense because pacifism is actually a really good answer to the Falkenrath Aristocrat. It's also a really good answer to a couple other cards that Tom Martell plays that have indestructible. For example, Boros Reckoner, you can't attack or block now. It's a great way to deal with it that doesn't deal damage. So shout out to the innovation by Eric Froelich and probably his team. Now, Tom's in a really tough spot. He's got 3 lands, a Tragic Slip, and a Boros Reckoner. He's trying to figure out whether or not he can attack with his champion. He really can't. Plays another Boros Reckoner, has to pass it over with Tragic Slip up, can block the Gyre Sage with his Champion of the Parish. The Champion of the Parish dies, and then he can use the Tragic Slip to kill the other Boros Reckoner without letting it deal any damage. From its ability, it will have dealt combat damage if he takes that line. Now, Eric is looking at his hand and he's thinking, okay, this Hellrider would be amazing if I had a land, but I can't cast it. I could play another Boros Reckoner, or I can Mizium Mortars. If I Mizium Mortars the Boros Reckoner, he deals 4 damage to me, probably killing my Boros Reckoner, and then the Boros Reckoner goes back at their face. Pacifism busted, man. I think that it's one of those cards that people probably underestimate it because of how long it's been around, and but like in this situation, right? It's just a way to deal with one of your opponent's creatures that is indestructible and or can't die. I will say Froelich's got a really tough decision here. Opponent is attacking with a Boros Reckoner. Do you chump with your Champion of the Parish, and then the Boros Reckoner gets to deal a damage upstairs, and then you Tragic Slip? In that situation, you're 2-for-1ing yourself against this Boros Reckoner. Opponent does decide, or Tom Martell does decide to block the Boros Reckoner with the Champion. Now the Tragic Slip is live, so it depends whether or not Eric plays a different spell. The second Boros Reckoner is so good here because they have the same power. Oh, he's saying trigger on the stack. I would like to kill your Boros Reckoner, and they have the same power, so it actually won't get a counter. I'm sorry. Helping his friend out here. Tragic Slip, murdering the Boros Reckoner. Boros Reckoner not being able to... Yeah, he's like, it does not have... It does not count toughness or... Oh, really cool interaction. I think Evolve is power or toughness. However, Tragic Slip shrunk the Boros Reckoner with the Evolve trigger on the stack, so when the Evolve trigger resolved, the Boros Reckoner that it's looking at would have been a 0/0, I believe. I don't think it checks the last known information. There's Gyre Sage. It's tapped for a green for each counter on it. So Gyre Sage could be tapping for like 7 if you get 7 counters on it somehow. But in this situation, just 1. Now, Froelich's still locked with those 4 drops in his hand. The Mizium Mortars, pretty good. I mean, you could tap your Gyre Sage in order to put this Garruk Relentless into play. Might be what he wants to do. Mizium Mortars also not the greatest here. Might be incentivized to just jam the 4/4, evolve the Gyre Sage. Now you have 5 mana for next turn. If you draw a land, you can go double spell. Looks like attacking with the Boros Reckoner. We go back to Tom Martell's side. Looking at a hand of 2 lands, I believe. Last time I looked at this hand, it was only a Tragic Slip. Oh, and this is okay, so this is interesting. This is game 4. So when they went to sideboards, they had already gone 1-1. Martell leads 2 games to 1 in this 5-game match. Boros Reckoner on Boros Reckoner action. Give it first strike, give it first strike. They trade. They both deal 3 to each other. Tragic Slip taking out the Gyre Sage, putting Eric back to 3 mana with 2 4-drops in hand. A Skirkstag Priest. Tap 3 creatures you control. If a creature dies this turn, make a 5/5 demon with flying. Card was awesome back in the day. Looks like just a pair of lands in the hand for Tom Martell. Really not what you want to see from this position. Eric, not in a great spot either. Drew a Thundermaw Hellkite. Has a Domri. Domri can fight. And Frolic has 2 lands in hand and will concede. Understanding that the Monsters deck just can apply so much pressure so fast, doesn't even need the 4th and the 5th land to play the good haymakers that he has. Oh, back when the comic books were new. Oh, what a time to be alive. We're going to go back over to the control matchups. Ben Stark versus his Jeskai opponent. Boros Reckoner really being a breakthrough card from the set for this Pro Tour. 3 mana for a 3/3. When it deals damage, whenever it's dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target creature or player, and you can pay a red or a white to give it first strike. Imagine a thunderstorm that's also a tactical genius. That's him. Yeah, that makes sense. It's pretty awesome. And it reminds us a lot of that card that we know, Screaming Nemesis from Standard. And honestly, I'm sure this was the inspiration for Screaming Nemesis. But this card was oppressive in its standard format. You really needed a way to just kill it, or as we saw, pacifism to take it out of combat. Otherwise, you kind of just like Screaming Nemesis, just have a way to attack every turn through blocks, just push damage constantly, and it's kind of insane. Doing a little shuffling, doing a little mulliganing. We're not going to go back to Ben Stark. They don't want to watch more Control because it's not the greatest for content. I will say the commentators for this Pro Tour, if you want to watch this back without my commentary, go watch this video. Randy Bueller, Rich, I believe were the 2 commentators. They're geniuses. I love Randy Bueller. I love Rich Hagen. All of the commentators that work for Magic the Gathering are absolute legends, and they do an amazing job. I feel kind of bad that I'm not letting you guys listen to them, but this is what it was like when I was a kid, watching this in middle school and high school on my laptops, super excited, and just trying to like break it down. You get to see the Goblin's perspective. Both players running out their hands, taking a deep breath to reset. It's 2/2, as close as can possibly be. You see the man there with the typewriter, aka the computer laptop thing. This hand is very slow. 1 removal spell, a Loxodon Smiter, 2 lands. Has to ship it. This cannot be a keep. Decides to keep this hand, hoping that he draws a land. He has 3 looks at a land. He has a 5-drop. He has all these giant haymakers. If he draws that 3rd land, this game is his. He's got it as a Rulia the War Leader to give him extra combats. He can do everything and a ham sandwich. However, he needs the mana. He didn't keep a hand that can cast his spells, and he's really hoping that his deck can be nice to him. Whereas his opponent made a disciplined mulligan and decided to try to look for a better hand. Immediately going to 5, though, this is not a good sign. Sometimes you have to be disciplined, and you have to throw back an unplayable hand. However, and now he's saying he probably should have kept his 7. That is the difficulty of playing Magic. Sometimes the variance punches you in the dick. However, both players stoic, absolute legends. I believe both of these players are Hall of Famers. If not Hall of Famers, Magic the Gathering legends. And Yeah, sometimes you have to go to 5, and this was a time when you would go to 5 and you just have to keep the 5 random cards that you pulled. Thankfully, he's got 3 lands and a Boros Reckoner, so he might just win this game. Oh, and the camera's gone for a second. I swear that wasn't me. Plays a Haunted Witness and attacks. Shocks. No shocks. Plays an Isolated Chapel. I have that same Isolated Chapel from back then. I love this card. Plays a Skirkstag High Priest. Passes it back. Eric drew the 3rd land and has to figure out, does he want to kill his opponent's thing, or does he want to play a Gyre Sage so he can play a 4-drop next turn? He decides to slow down his opponent by stopping the Skirkstag, which makes sense because making 5 drops can just take over the game so fast. Now that he's had his 3rd land, he can run out his 3-drop on 4, not shock himself when he plays his land. Slam next turn with a Hellrider into an Aurelia if he draws 2 lands, which is like the hottest thing in the world. Opponent looking at a Falconwrath Aristocrat, I believe. Attacks with a Haunted Witness. This has to be a trap. Martel has a Doomed Traveler, Cartel Aristocrat, and a Blasphemous Act. The Boros Reckoner can take a damage, putting it to 2. Plays the Cartel Aristocrat and the Doomed Traveler, deploying a really efficient board here. However, Frolic, having mana for days now, has all of the tools in the world to slow Tom Martell down. It's just how he decides to sequence here. Does he play defensively? Does he try to swing back? Hellrider really does nothing here. It's one of those times when you're looking at your hand and you're trying to figure out, how do I lose? So he pushes with the Boros Reckoner. This tells Tom that he's trying to bluff because there's really no reason for him to attack here. He can't really find a reason to attack. He's thinking really hard, honestly, about trying to find a reason why Eric would do this. And he's trying to, and what he arrives on is that he's trying to get him to race. He wants to bait Tom into trying to race, and Tom's like, we can race totally fine here. Untap, upkeep, draw. His hand is Blasphemous Act, Boros Reckoner. If he's able to play a second Boros Reckoner, play a Blasphemous Act, he can 26 his opponent. What he does is he just plays the Boros Reckoner and passes. He says, I can go to 2. I don't care what you do. I can go to 2. You can attack with an Aurelia. You can take an extra combat. As long as I'm alive with these Boros Reckoners, I win the game on my turn. And Eric doesn't know that. Eric's got Hellrider, Aurelia, which if they had the Hellriders in play, this Aurelia might be able to kill Tom here. However, he's played this game very defensively, and his opponent, who had a mold of 5, was able to have an aggressive curve and just got underneath him. He's going to tap out for his 6-drop, level up the Gyre Sage. He's going to attack, attack trigger, untap all his creatures, and he gets a second combat. So now, if he doesn't feel like he can deal lethal, he deals the damage, and then he just has them back as pseudo-vigilance, so he can block and eat his opponent's things. Tom sees his opponent tapped out, is thinking about this Gyre Sage. Does the mana matter? If his opponent has some way to fight one of his Boros Reckoners, he can take it off the field, and then this Blasphemous Act does not win him the game. He really needs to just be able to cast this Blasphemous Act and have his 2 Boros Reckoners alive. He can't. The issue is he can't double block this Boros Reckoner because it'll just shoot one of his Boros Reckoners. It's a really tough spot here. I think Tom is trying to make sure so Eric was doing the math of how he can't lose. Now Tom's trying to figure out how can he not lose. Really, really tough spot. All the commentators know exactly what Tom has in his hand. It's one of the most high-stakes moments. Sack it to the Aristocrat, so no damage. Trades with the Boros Reckoner. The Aristocrat is... the Aristocrat is indestructible, so it doesn't die. However, he gets to throw 3 damage upstairs, putting Eric to 14. And he has 2 spirits that can fly. So if he just goes to combat and attacks with 2 spirits... Oh, but then he can't cast the... And now the issue is... Blasphemous Act is 9 mana. It's 8 and then 1. He has 7 there's 7 creatures in play. So he has to get 1 point of damage through and then cast the Blasphemous Act. The issue is he'll lose a bunch of creatures if he tries to push the damage. If he just attacks with the 2 1/1s, he decides to pass. Just attacks with Aurelia because it's got Vigilance. Give the Falconwrath indestructible. Blasphemous Act wipes the board. The Falconwrath gets through for 2 damage, and Tom Martell wins the match. The quarterfinals, advancing. Let me make sure it's the quarterfinals. Wait. The semifinals. Martell wins the semifinals, advancing. Let me see. I think we were right here. Advancing. That's the semifinal. I just did this. The semifinals, advancing to the finals against the winner of the control mirror on the other side. Oh, such a close match. Now we're going to jump over. Awesome player. Absolute legend. Beautiful person in the Magic community. Going back to Ben Stark. The control mirror in the semifinals. Joel Larson playing the blue extremely well. They're tied 2-2 going to game 5. Ben Stark, Magic Hall of Famer. Snapcaster Mage, Devour Flesh, Dissipate, Supreme Verdict, Drowned Catacomb, Isolated Chapel. The hand for Stark. Larson, Snapcaster Mage, Thundermaw Hellkite, Double Boros Charm, Sphinx of Revelation, and Sulphur Falls. The hand for Larson. Both players deploying their mana, trying to make sure that they are as efficient as possible, not dealing themselves that much damage. Ben Stark plays a land and passes. Joel Larson end step Boros Charms, putting Ben Stark to 14 or 16. Psychic Spiral is a card in Joel Larson's hand, I believe that they showed. I remember Psychic Spiral being a house back in the day. Grabbing a Searing Spear, being able to kill that Restoration Angel is going to be really important. Psychic Spiral, 5 mana. Mill X cards or X the number of cards in your graveyard. So let's say you have half your library in your graveyard. You play Psychic Spiral. Your opponent mills half their library. It's amazing. Good defense against his Nephalia Drownyard tech. So does he take the Sphinx of Revelation, the Thundermaw Hellkite, or the Psychic Spiral? Could also target the Snapcaster Mage. Larson saying, I'm probably going to assume you're not going to take my Searing Spear. These other cards are just so much more impactful, so I'm going to move them over here so you don't have to really think too hard about them. Takes the Boros Charm. This shows that Stark probably has a Sphinx's Revelation, is attempting to slow his opponent down. Also, while it takes the Boros Charm because it's a 4 mana instant speed removal spell. Burn spell. Also, it fogs his Sphinx or Supreme Verdicts, as well as allowing one of his creatures to get double strike. This Thundermaw could attack for 10 if it was targeted by a Boros Charm. Here, Larson just untaps and plays the aggro roll, slamming a Thundermaw Hellkite. Ben Stark debates and then decides to counter it, playing a Think Twice to try to hit his land drop, and then passes it over. Really wanting to hit that land drop there, not able to get it. Joel just goes to combat, attacking for 3 in the air right off the bat. Searing Spear before blocks to kill the Restoration Angel. Untap upkeep. Looks like Stark hit his land drop. He's going to play the land and pass. A Cavern of Souls is the draw for Joel Larson. Probably a card out of the sideboard. Might name Angel here, allowing his Restoration Angels to just resolve unfettered here, which is kind of amazing. Untap, upkeep, draw, end step. Untap, upkeep, draw. Flashes back, think twice to draw. Plays the land for turn. Opponent Sphinxes at the end step. He negates it. Ben Stark negates it. Goes to combat, attacks for 3. Doing a great job pushing the damage here by Joel Larson, holding up his instant speed removal and his protection. This Snapcaster Mage being able to flashback Boros Charm is going to be amazing. Untapped upkeep, draws. So many lands. Plays a tapped Watery Grave and passes. Larson slams a Sphinx's Revelation. Ben is thinking. Does he Sphinx's Revelation of his own back to try to find the counterspell? He could flash in a Restoration Angel, dig the Augur of Bolas, find the negate the spell. Attacks with the attacks with the Restoration Angel. Snapcaster flashes back the Boros Charm to burn. Baby burn. Ben Stark down to 7. Untap upkeep, draw. Augur of Bolas is the card for turn. Ben trying to figure out double Sphinx's He's just got all those cards in hand, and it's just so good. He's trying to figure out what he should do here with those cards, though. It's the hardest part as a control player. What do you do with the resources that you have? You have all these tools. You have all these awesome cards. How do you get there? Ben going down to 3. Really low life total here. Thinking he can devour flesh his own creature to gain life. It looks like in response to the Restoration Angel, Ben Stark cast the Restoration Angel. In response, Joel Larson put the Snapcaster Mage into play and is targeting a Boros Charm. Boros Charm is on the stack and forces Ben Stark to sacrifice his own Augur of Bolas to gain life, to stay alive. So gains 3, loses 3, or loses 4. Sphinx's Revelation going up to 8. Plays a tap land. Attacks. Thundermaw off the top, and that's the game for Joel Larson. Ben Stark, the absolute legend, the innovator of this tournament, playing Nephalia Drownyard, gets taken out by Jeskai Control and the Thundermaw Hellkite. Thundermaw is really good back then, and it's still really good now. If you don't play Thundermaw, check it out. Really appreciate y'all watching here. Yeah, look at these legends in the booth. We got Louis Scott Vargas, we got Brian David Marshall, and we got Rich. Rich is my favorite commentator of all time. If you enjoy MTG gameplay, you owe it to Rich. He's the person who makes your commentary sound fun. And the reason we have good commentary nowadays is because everybody grew up watching Rich, and we love the way that he talked about the game, the passion that he had for it, the desire that he went to the Pro Tours to watch these amazing players play the game at the highest level, and his enthusiasm is infectious, and it bleeds into all of their levels of commentary. So this has been a Pro Tour recap breakdown with Goblin Ringleader. And if you enjoy this kind of content, just let me know in the comments down below. Like and subscribe if you're not subscribed, and I'll see you next time.